With me today is Georgia Bamber. Georgia is an author and certified life coach. Georgia holds a Bachelor of Economics from Cornell University, a Master's of Psychology from Monash University, and she also has an MBA from the City University Business School in London. Georgia is certified in plant-based nutrition and completes in endurance running and triathlon events, as well as being a yogi and insight meditation practitioner. Georgia has worked as a therapist counseling refugee and asylum seekers, and she now focuses in the area of positive psychology and helping people to find their spark. Welcome, Georgia, and thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thank you very much, Christy. It's a great pleasure.
So I have got so much to ask you because there's just so much to unpack just from that brief sort of intro. But I wanted to first ask you, you help people find their spark, but who helps you find yours?
I have a lot of people in my life. Obviously, my family and my husband is very instrumental in that. And I'm just one of those people, I suppose, I've always had this fascination with, what is a good life, and what does it take to create that good life? And how can I make that for myself? I've always had this attitude that life's just kind of too short, and we're so lucky to be here that we should all be making as much of it as we possibly can. So I've always, even since I was little, always been looking for kind of the best experience or how I could use my time the most. So it's just I think it's my personal drive. I just want to get as much out of life as I can.
So I imagine a lot of people that you do work with, they don't have that already. They don't have that spark and that drive and determination. So how do you help people find that?
No, you're absolutely right. And I've often, looked around at people and noticed that they aren't as happy as maybe I feel or as I think they might be. And when I was doing my master's in psychology, my thesis was actually on subjective well-being and psychological well-being. And I was doing a study around that. But anyway, as a result of what I was doing, I had to do a survey of people and ask them various questions about how happy they are with their life and things like that. So I got hundreds of responses back from these surveys, and I was just dumbfounded at how many people were really miserable. And it made me so sad. And that really kind of reinforced what I wanted to do with my life, which was to help people, get out of that space where they're not enjoying their life, or even that space, I think, where, most people are just reacting to life as it comes to them. And everyone's, got lives that are okay, but really they could be living a life that's really fun and amazing. And so I try and move people from that okay level to really enjoying it, and the way I do that is just by helping them get back in touch with who they really are, I suppose, and what they enjoy and what kind of sings to them, I suppose.
Do you find a little bit of resistance from people? Because obviously people seek you out and they want to sort of get there, but wanting to do something and actually doing it are two completely different things. So do you find people sometimes resist, they've come to you for advice, but they're still resistant into the things that you're trying to help them with?
Absolutely. So there's two kinds of clients. They all come with a similar problem to me generally, and that is they either don't know what it is that they want, or they kind of have an idea of what they want, but they don't know how to do it. And then I get one half of them, actually probably more than half, but one set of clients, takes everything you say on board, is ready to think out of the box and just kind of jumps in headfirst and makes changes. And then you get another kind of client who, once they hear what it involves to change, decides that they actually don't want to do it at all. And they often just disappear altogether. They don't like the confrontation of having to do something different. People just want, I think, that magic pill where you just kind of take it and you wake up the next morning and life is like you want it to be. They don't want to do the work. So I generally only like to work with people who are willing to kind of do that work and think, a bit differently.
Do you think that's because it's quite hard to look within yourself and to, challenge, I suppose, the views and opinions and, the basic being of who you are? Do you think that that's why there's that sort of push-pull with people, because they don't really want to question who they are deep down?
Absolutely. And I think if you're coming to get some help to change, at some level, you're saying to yourself, I'm not doing it right by myself. And when people find it difficult to ask for help quite often, which is a shame, because having a coach or somebody, a mentor in your life to kind of help you through and guide you is an amazing tool and resource to have. So yeah, I think there's part of that. They don't like to seek help, but equally they don't like to look at the things they might have done wrong. And nobody likes to look back and admit that they should have done something differently or have regrets about where they were. So yeah, a lot of people just don't want to confront that. And I completely understand it's not a fun place to be, but it is the only place that's going to move you forwards.
100%. I think reflection's really challenging for a lot of people, but it's something that you need to do to be able to move forward.
Because if you don't
And
know what's wrong, how are you gonna change it, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely. And speaking about moving forward, so as I mentioned, you did an economics degree and then you
Hmm.
went on to do a master's of psychology. Now,
Yeah.
look, I'm not an economist and I'm not a psychologist, but I imagine that they are worlds apart. So, why did you decide to move from that field into psychology, and how did you find the transition?
Well, the reason I went into economics in the first place, I grew up in a family. My stepfather is an investment banker, and that's kind of what I always thought that I was going to go and do. So I did economics. I did it in high school, and then I did it at university. It's what I knew, and it's what I thought would lead me to my career path. And I quite enjoyed it. But if I went back and did university again, I'm telling you, I would not be choosing economics. But anyway, so I did that, and then I went into banking and realized after about 2 years of working for an investment bank in the UK that I did not like the corporate life. So I left and went and did an MBA, and then that kind of just was a cascade of events after that. And I didn't do my psychology degree until I had my first son, I believe. Yeah. And then I just wanted to, I had my kids, but I needed to use my brain. So I decided to go back to school, and that's when I did my master's in psychology. And actually, in a funny way, economics and business and psychology, they're actually all related. I mean, psychology affects every field pretty much in
Absolutely.
one way or the other. So yeah, they do kind of gel a little bit. But yeah, psychology was definitely much more my jam in terms of where I wanted to go forwards in my life. Yeah.
So you worked as a therapist counseling refugees and asylum seekers
Hmm.
and also with women's support groups. So I'm
Yep.
interested to learn how you got into that work and how long you sort of stayed within that field.
I only did it for about 2 years. I was in Hong Kong at the time, and I started because I was doing my master's and you had to get some practical experience. And the organization I joined, it was called Christian Action, and they helped asylum seekers and refugees. So that's how I started doing that work. And it was very rewarding, but extremely harrowing work. And within that, I worked with a group of women just to help them kind of gain confidence and self-esteem and just cope better with the situation they're in. It's a very difficult and trying situation for the kind of asylum seekers and refugees everywhere. But in Hong Kong, there are special circumstances as well, which make it extra fun for them. So yeah, it was a very strange period of my life. And again, I realized what it is that I wanted to be doing through that. Even though the work was rewarding and there are some wonderful people who do it, I realized it wasn't for me. I found it very draining. And I found the kind of juxtaposition between the life I luckily get to live and these people was like, it was very strange to go from counseling people and hearing about terrible things that happened in Somalia or, in Sri Lanka or wherever, and then go home and see my little boys kind of playing happily, watching the Disney Channel. It was very difficult and I found it quite jarring. So when we moved to Australia, I didn't pursue that field, and then I went in a different direction again.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, obviously, dealing with those sort of people, they're quite troubled. They've been through a lot of adversity.
Mm.
Did you find that you took on a lot of their emotional pain, or were you able to sort of be able to leave it at the door once you got home and you saw your boys and you had that happiness again? Were you able to disconnect, or did you find that difficult?
For me, it was almost a bit of shell shock. I think we all know that these things are going on out somewhere in the world, but you don't really know it until you speak to somebody about that direct experience. So it's almost traumatic to hear it. I mean, nothing, of course, like the people experience who actually go through it. But yeah, I found it quite difficult to listen to and handle. Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned that you spent about 2 years doing it. Do you think
Mm-hmm.
that that sort of field has an expiry date? Do you think there's only a certain amount of time that you can do something like that before you have to pull back for your own well-being?
I think that it takes a lot of self-care, obviously, to be able to do that for any length of time. But I think it's just different people for different things. Like my skill is definitely lies on the other end of the spectrum, helping people to go from let's say, call it a normal life, like a base level life, healthy life, to living their ultimate happiest or best life. I like to take people up on that scale, as opposed to generally counselors and therapists have people on the other end of the scale and they want to bring them to the base level of normal. And I find that my actual skill sets, the way I work best and inspire people most, is on the positive end of the spectrum. It's just where I fit more naturally, and some people fit more naturally at the other side. So
And speaking about that, you've got a book called Achieve Anything You Want. So, that in itself, just the title, love it, inspires just so much. To be able, as you said, to just write, not to just rise up to that mediocre level, but to go and extend beyond it.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it?
I decided to write the books because, as I said, I think having a coach or having a mentor in your life is probably the most life-changing experience that anyone can have. To have that person who's behind you and listening to what you say and helping you brainstorm and, all of that stuff is an incredible thing. But coaching is expensive. And it's also hard to find good coaches. They're not always in your local area, or because coaching isn't, I suppose, you don't have to be certified to be a coach. Anybody can put coach up, on the back of their door. It's very difficult to kind of find somebody who's actually going to be able to help you in a qualified way. And then the ones who are good are obviously expensive. So I wanted to create some tools for people who couldn't either find a coach or couldn't afford a coach. So I've created, this is my first book, and I've just actually finished the final draft of my second book. I'm creating some tools for people so that they can get that coaching experience, but through a book. So it is a self-help book, I suppose, but it's really takes them through the same process that I would take them through if they coached with me in person. So it's a way to kind of help more people with the skills that I use helping my clients.
So how do you go about getting a book published? Like, you've got an idea, you want to help people, but how do you turn that idea into a published book?
That was a whole new set of skills that I have had to learn over the past year. I went a route, it's a new route actually. So it's purely self-publishing, although I'm in control of my book, but I have somebody who published the book with me, but they're my publisher. So it's a weird hybrid of publishing and self-publishing. So I had like a publishing mentor behind my back, and she's brilliant. And she basically took me through the whole path. She launched the book for me. She got me with a book distributor in Australia. She did all of that stuff, but I'm the one who's actually publishing the book in terms of the financial cost of it. So it was a very, very steep learning curve, but it was brilliant. And my book mentor was brilliant. We got the book to #1 bestseller in 3 different categories on Amazon. So that was really cool. So thank you. It's been a really fun journey. And so I can now say I'm a best-selling author, which is a nice thing to say. And it's been fun, but yes, not for the faint of hearted. It's definitely a lot more work than you anticipate it's going to be. And having somebody again in your corner makes a massive difference.
So speaking about learning, you obviously, just from your education, you're somebody that seeks out continual learning. Mm-hmm. But you've also lived in, I think, was it 7 different countries?
I think it's 6, and then Hawaii. 6 countries plus Hawaii, which kind of is like a little country of its own.
Yeah.
So yes, I've lived in I think that's 3 or 4 different continents. I lose track. But yes, I was obviously born in Australia, but I left when I was 16 and was sent to boarding school overseas, and then didn't come back for almost 20 years. And in that time, kind of hopped around the world quite a bit.
So how much do you think that the traveling around to the different countries has helped you as a person be able to help others?
Oh, a lot, because I think when you live in different countries and see different cultures, obviously you see that humans live in all different kinds of ways. So I think it gives you a far greater understanding than if you'd always stayed in the same town or the same city and not traveled that much. So for sure, it's given me perspective.
Now, you've done a lot, but you're also a wife and mother, which is, probably one of the most important things that we can ever do.
My husband would say so, but anyway.
But I'm really curious to know how you manage to balance everything, because, I studied as well as worked and had a family, and I found it really, really tough. So how have you managed to balance out everything?
I'm just super disciplined. And I know a lot of people think that being disciplined kind of takes your freedom away, but I found the exact opposite. When I'm disciplined, it gives me so much freedom because it allows me to do all the things that I want to do. And also I have pockets of time in my life where I just relax and do nothing or have fun. Like it's the discipline, definitely, and being organized and structured. And I'm just that kind of person. So yeah.
And speaking about being disciplined, I saw yesterday you posted on Instagram that I think it was 4 years straight for every single day you'd completed at least 10 minutes of yoga.
That's right. So yeah. So that's the kind of discipline I'm talking about. Yeah.
That is discipline. So how, obviously people set out with a goal and they want to sort of do things, but how do you do it day in, day out, and to become so, disciplined in being able to fulfill your goals that you want to do?
I think it depends on the kind of person you are, but I am an all or nothing person. And for me, it's easier to make a decision once than have to make the decision every day. So if I just make the decision once that I'm going to do yoga every day, I don't wake up the next day, should I do yoga today? Should I not do yoga today? I just do it. It's like you brush your teeth. You don't question yourself every morning, am I going to brush my teeth today or not? So all the things that I really want to have as a firm part of my life, I make them, just a no-brainer. It's like brushing my teeth. I do it every day. I don't ask myself. So I also train 6 days a week for whatever events that I'm doing. And that's just what I do. I get Sundays off. I always have. But those other days, I don't ask myself, do I do exercise this morning? No, I just get up and do it. So I think it's the same with most of the things in my life that I want to create. It's just that discipline around it. And I'd make the decision once, which makes it so much easier.
So how big of a part does your own health and well-being play into your life?
Probably one of the biggest parts, because my health and well-being gives me the energy to do everything else that I want to do. So if I'm not eating well, sleeping well, and kind of exercising as I want to be, then I just don't feel as good and I don't get as much done. And so it's almost number one for me, I suppose.
So do you think it's a bit easier for you to, with your psychology background, to be able to say, I need that time, and then to be able to explain to your family that you need that time in order to be the best mother and to be the best wife?
I think so. It's just about knowing how to set boundaries, and boundaries people get confused. People think boundaries are about what other people need to do. Boundaries are all about what you need to do. And so I've always carved out some time for myself, and every single day, even since my kids were really, really little, that they know is just my time and they just don't bother me at that time. So I think it's just being really firm with your boundaries and knowing that I think the key to being able to accomplish a lot of things and having this really balanced life is to have those moments of self-care, to realize that taking care of yourself, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating some healthy food, that's more important than almost anything in terms of making sure that you kind of hit your targets and reach your goals, much more than kind of, burning the candle at both ends and working till all hours. That doesn't actually help you. You'd be much better off going to bed, getting a good night's sleep.
So I think balance is something that I personally struggle with. It's something that I've always found really hard to get that sort of right balance. What would your piece of advice be to people like me to take that first step in being able to get that balance? Like, what's the first thing that you need to do in order to set yourself up for success into being able to do it?
I think firstly, you kind of need to let go of the idea of balance in a way. I think on the whole, your life needs to be balanced. But I think in any one moment, you don't need to be balanced, in the sense that sometimes you really just need to focus on work and then some of the family stuff slips. Sometimes maybe in the school holidays, you really need to focus on the kids. So work slips a little bit. Like, you don't need to be all round balanced every single day. So I think it's getting realistic about that and thinking, what is my focus at the moment, and being happy with that. And then the other stuff will have their time in the limelight as well. So it's not that needing to be everything to everyone and be everywhere all the time. That's not what balance is about. It's about being realistic about what you want to accomplish and what your priorities are in that moment.
So, Georgia, many of my guests have spoken about the benefits of mindfulness and meditation, and it seems like a skill that we all seem to learn way too late in life. So, what's your message for anybody out there that hasn't tried it or might not think it's for them?
It's definitely for everybody, but maybe not in the package of sitting down on a cushion and, trying to kind of still your thoughts for half an hour. That's what everybody thinks meditation is. They think it's sitting there and having this void, empty head. And that's not what meditation, at least the kind that I like to practice, is about. Mine is more about creating a general awareness. And you can do that as you go throughout your everyday life. It just means being aware of what you are doing in the minute. So like right now, I'm just completely focused on doing this podcast with you, having our conversation. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner tonight, not thinking about where I need to take my son in an hour. I'm not thinking about that stuff. I'm just here with you. And I think the starting point for anyone is just to try and create that mindfulness in each moment in your life and be aware of what you do, instead of we're always thinking about all this other stuff and we don't pay attention to what we're actually doing. So I think that's a great starting point. And once you understand how that changes your life, you'll probably want to explore further.
So do you encourage your children and obviously your husband to be able to have that mindfulness as well?
If only I had those powers. I have two teenagers who are 16 and 17, so pretty much anything I tell them is just not cool. So I hope that I try to lead by example, I suppose, and I hope that when they get older, they'll look back and it will all make sense to them, and that I will have influenced them that way. But I mean, if you know teenagers, trying to get them to do anything you want is impossible. Husbands are, I think, in the same basket.
So I wanted to just talk a little bit about, you've been self-employed for a long, long time, and you've obviously made that conscious decision to do that. Now, obviously, during COVID, a lot of people have decided to make the shift, whether it's been through losing their employment or just wanting to change their life. How did you decide that you wanted to go it alone, and what challenges did you face in being self-employed and having to be accountable to yourself every single day?
I suppose, as I said, when I left university, I'd go and work in the corporate world for 2 years, and it just wasn't me. So working for myself has not really ever been an option. It's just the way I have. I am not afraid of hard work, but I like to have my time be my own. And you don't get that in the corporate world. And I think that's why a lot of people leave. They want to be the master of their own time. They don't want to have to be somewhere at 6:37 in the morning and they have to sit in that chair until whatever time they're allowed to leave. I like to live my days. I like to live it. So for me, it was the only choice to work for myself. And again, it comes back to that discipline. A lot of people, like my husband, is the opposite. He likes to be in an environment which is structured and he has people around him who can support him. He would hate to do what I do. But for me, that's the way I love to work. So I think it's definitely a personality thing as well, whether it's going to work for you. And if you're the kind of person who can't sit at home and not kind of flick the TV on or go to the fridge every 5 minutes to have a snack, then it might not be for you. So it really depends on that level of, personal discipline, I suppose.
Yeah, and it seems like it sort of does all come back to discipline each and every time. It's one of the most important things.
Yeah.
To learn a bit of that, I think.
You have issues with that area? Or you're not saying out loud?
If I set myself, goals, I can stick to it. But I'm certainly, one of those people whose mind wanders and, I think about a gazillion things and, yeah, definitely, as I said, struggle with balance. So, yeah. But how do you find it with regards to having to, I suppose, self-promote as well as, you've got your job and you're a coach and you're helping other people, but then you've actually got to go out and sell your services as well. How do you find that?
I find that a struggle because that is not my skill set. It is I actually love speaking and talking, and I'm happy to jump on and do a Facebook Live or be on Instagram, but I don't really actually like social media very much. And if I could do away with it, I would. I only do it really for business sake, and I enjoy it at that level. But I found out again that marketing in that way isn't my skill set. So the main way that I run my business is actually through public speaking and doing things like this podcast where the people market me. So I go and speak for people and they're bringing the audience rather than me having to try and find them, because I realized that I want to spend my time coaching and helping people. I don't want to spend my time doing content marketing and online marketing, and that's not what I'm about. So I get help. The short answer.
So you do speak at a lot of events and keynote speaking sort of situations. So how difficult was that the first time to get in front of all those people and talk, or is that just something that you're good at?
No, it's definitely not something I was natural at. It's just something that you just have to suck it up and do it. And the first time is really horrible, and then the second time is slightly less horrible. And then you start to enjoy it. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I love doing this. I really like it. And I'm missing doing in-person, live events, because you feed off the energy of the audience, and that's fantastic. But actually, COVID has kind of in a strange way worked out for me, because with everybody going on Zoom, it's really broadened my opportunities in terms of the people that I can reach. So I'm speaking from this room all over the world, all the time. It's fantastic. It's really fun.
And how did you find the shift to virtual? Did you feel, obviously you do feed off the energy in the room. How did you find when you're just speaking and you're just speaking to yourself on a screen?
Yeah, sometimes it's weird and it is hard to maintain that energy. I often will stand up, so I've kind of got a bit of a, bit more energy, but it is hard. But I do try and engage with the audience a bit. But sometimes you're just like, is anyone listening to me? I don't know. You're just in this kind of like your own little world. It's very odd. It is quite difficult, but There are some crowds which are tough crowds, like I suppose like speaking in-person events, and there are some, you know, online crowds who are really like engaged. So it just depends on who I'm speaking to.
And when you speak at those events, do they give you the topic to sort of talk on? Do they sort of give you an issue that, you know, either their members or their employees or anything are facing, and then you talk to it? Or is it something that you decide the topic and then deliver that to them?
Yeah, I have a couple of signature kind of workshops and presentations that I do. So I offer those. I prefer to do that because these are really well crafted. I put a lot of time and effort into them, and people get a lot out of them. And if I was just to do something as a one-off, I don't think I'd be able to put as much into it. So I prefer to do the things that I know I've really honed and that work.
And I wanted to also ask you, Georgia, how do you take on, you know, you work with a lot of people and you do a lot of one-on-one coaching.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with people that either, you know, they don't take your advice and they don't change, or they do try but they still don't sort of get there? Do you take that personally, or like how does that work? Because you're watching them,
Sometimes
you can only help them so much, and then people have got to
absolutely.
evolve.
It's like a fitness trainer. You can go to a gym and he can tell you need to do, you know, 10 push-ups a day, 5 pull-ups, whatever, but he can't do them for you. You know, he can only tell you what to. And it's the same with a coach. I can sit there, I can give my clients tools, I can help them brainstorm, I can listen to all their problems, whatever. But the only person who can implement the changes that, you know, we decide together that will work for them is them. And there's nothing I can do about that. And sometimes, yes, you take it, I suppose you do take it personally, but it's, you know, at the end of the day, I know it's not down to me. And you just have to create that space for them to kind of have their own journey. And sometimes it doesn't work because they're not willing to change. There's nothing you can do.
Georgia, you have just blown my mind. Like when I started reading all the things that you've done, like I'll be honest, I felt a bit bad because I felt a little bit inadequate. I was at work going, you wouldn't believe what this woman's done. She's done this, she's done this, she's done this, she's done this. So what is next for you?
What is next? Well, in business wise, I'm hopefully launching next year a bigger kind of group coaching course, like kind of it's going to be a hybrid of a course group coaching program, because I really want to start, you know, scaling up and reaching as many people as possible. So for me, I want to take that business to that next level. That's my big challenge for that. And then I think this year, in terms of my other kind of goal, I always have a fitness goal, but this year has been a bit weird because all events have been cancelled. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going with that next year, but I haven't got anything. I would like to do a PhD one day. I've got to say that's on my bucket list, but I'm yet to find a topic that I would be interested in enough to, like, you know, sit down and do for 4 or 5 years. I chop and change a lot. So, but a PhD, I would like to be a doctor.
Well, certainly if anybody's going to do it, you are, with the discipline that you've shown.
But the problem is when you write a book, go to achieve anything you want, then you're really stuck, aren't you?
That's it. You actually have to live it. That's right. That's right. Look, I've really enjoyed chatting with you today, Georgia, but I do have one last question for you before I let you go. What would you do differently if only you knew?
Tricky question. Well, I don't know if I would do anything differently. I would definitely think differently. I think, you know, like everyone, I suppose, when you look back on your life, it all makes sense as to why you did what you did and it took you to where you are. So I think I would just have more confidence in myself, and that I would get myself to where I needed to be in the end. I think, like everybody, when you're in your 20s and even in your early 30s, you know, you can wonder sometimes what you're doing and how you ended up where you are, and things happen. And I think when you can look back, it all makes sense. So I think for me, I would just have greater confidence in knowing that I was going to sort it out and it would be all good in the end. So, and hopefully I can have that confidence now moving forward in my life as well. So I've got to listen to myself now and take that advice forwards too.
Absolutely. And look, I think, you know, you can achieve anything you want, and you've done that. You've done so many amazing things, and I'm sure that you inspire people, you know, all around the world. So, you know, hopefully one day I'll be able to come to one of your face-to-face workshops, and we'll be able to meet and chat in person. That would be fantastic. So if you'd like to know more about Georgia, you can follow her on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'll have links to those social media profiles on my website, and a full bio and also a link to Georgia's website will be available on ifonlyyouKnewpodcast.com.au. Thanks, Georgia.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.